Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Pranam Da. Thank you for joining us today. I will leave a couple more seconds to make sure that everyone's arrived, because I know you've all had a busy day in school. And so we'll leave 20, 30 seconds and then we'll get a start going on tonight's event. Okay, we'll get started, shall we? So I'd like to firstly welcome you all this evening after a long day at school. Really appreciate that you take this time to learn a bit more about the new specification here this evening. So my name is Diane Jones and I will be presenting the GCSE The Science Double new specification briefing this afternoon. It hopefully will only be about an hour. We have got allocated an hour and a half, but I don't want to keep you too long this evening. And I want to give you some housekeeping rules to begin with. So the presenter is required to make a recording of this event. This is a control designed to ensure that WJC is able to demonstrate compliance with regulatory conditions of recognition, specifically conditions relating to the confidentiality of assessment materials. The recording will be made available to the qualification regulator if required and will be published on the new qualification page on the WJC website. We will also provide a copy of the recording in the post-event Dropbox for delegates after this event also. Please note that delegates are not permitted to make any audio or video recording of any aspect of this event, please. Thank you. Now then, questions. There was an email sent out, I think, in the beginning of September with any pre-submitted questions regarding this event, and we have collated some of them over the last couple of weeks. So thank you to everyone that sent them in. We've also got some questions from previous events from last week and last night that we'll be discussing at the end of this event. But I also want to encourage you to use the tab at the top right hand side, I think it is for you guys, that has Q&A there. On there you'll see a little tab where you can press start a discussion or start a question. Just put your question in there whenever you feel like it. I recommend putting it as soon as it comes to your head. There's no silly questions here. And what that will enable our team is to look at these questions while we're going through, and then I'll make the transition easier at the end then. Because this is a Teams Town Hall meeting, it means I unfortunately cannot see you guys. All your cameras and microphones are all switched off, so I am just speaking to a screen, which is quite daunting. But this is the way of interacting with me this evening, is to ask any questions in the tab there. And again, please do this throughout the presentation as it'll make it easier at the end. There is a slight delay, so I think you guys are about 30 seconds behind me at the moment, and so there will be a bit of a waiting at the end for any questions that come in then at the end. But yeah, moving on to a link to the pre-event materials will have been sent to the email addresses provided on registration, and a link to the PowerPoint presentation and recording will be sent to the same addresses after this event also. And as mentioned earlier, you can also in future look back at this on the WJC Sciences Double Award website. So, as I stated before, my name is Diane Jones. I am the Science Subject Advisor here at WJC. New to the role since September, after being a Head of Science and Technology at Ysgol Gwent Ysgwyd in Newport for the last couple of years. And I'll be going through with you this evening the new specification for the GCSEs, as I know we're all eager to see what this is going to look like in September 2026. But first, I will go through some introduction and updates on the triple science, the separate sciences that was announced about 2 weeks ago now, and give you any updates on that. Then we'll go on to look at the new qualification. I'll give you a brief guide of that, before then going on to pre-submitted questions and some answers. And then any further questions that you guys have during the evening, please again put them in the Q&A and we'll look at them before finally looking at some further support available to you all at the end. So, you may have seen this already. I would encourage you to look at it in more detail by following the link on this PowerPoint, or even if you go on the WJC website, you will see a link for the statement. But the big news really is that our existing GCSE in biology, chemistry and physics, the separate sciences, will continue to be available until the summer of 2031. Okay, and this following a survey that was sent out to teachers in September, asking for their opinion on what option was best for them. So the conclusion that came from this survey was that option 1 was the favorited. So what that means is that we will amend Unit 3, the practical unit, in the current GCSE biology, chemistry and physics, but there will be no amendments done to Unit 1 and 2. The Unit 3 in biology, chemistry and physics will be amended to be in line with the approach in Unit 7, which is the scientific inquiry of the Sciences Double Award qualification, the assessment of scientific inquiry skills. And this will then be available for Year 10 cohorts starting in September 2026. And this also means that there will be 8 tasks live in centres. For the separate science qualification, centres then can choose from the Science Double Award or a task set for each separate science qualification. And then during the Pan Wales face-to-face event, the Preparing to Teach event for GCSE The Sciences Double Award, which will be happening in spring of 2026, where we'll all be meeting in different locations across Wales. There will be a session on the assessment of science inquiry there, and we'll go into this in a lot more detail on that day. But this session will also now apply to the amended approach to Unit 3 for the separate sciences as well. So it'll be very useful for everyone. Prior to the Preparing to Teach events also, we will publish amended GCSE biology, chemistry and physics specifications. They'll be developing a mapping document which shows whether and where topics in Unit 1 and 2 of the current GCSE biology, chemistry and physics appear in the new GCSE The Sciences Double Award, with a summary of key changes of focus. This should be used in conjunction with the comprehensive guidance to teaching for the new GCSE The Sciences Double Award, which will also be published prior to the events. And I'll give you some dates for them in a few slides' time. Then we will also be supporting teaching and learning through highlighting and clearly labelling the full range of blended learning resources available for both the current GCSE biology, chemistry and physics and the new GCSE The Sciences Double Award. Okay, so I hope that makes it clearer what is happening with the separate sciences and the new qualification, the Double Award. Here we can see the Made for Wales support package that's available. I hope you've all had a chance to look at the new specification, but I completely understand as teachers, so busy you might not have had a chance to look through it very thoroughly yet. So hopefully tonight as well will be of benefit to you, as we'll be going and looking at some of the key changes that's occurring in the new qualification. But that is available on the new qualification homepage now. I'll show you where to find that in a link later on. Also available right now is the specification walkthrough. You'll find this in the blended learning tab. It will ask you to do a booking, but once you fill the form in, you have access to it. It's quite sensible and easy to do. And these are available right now. Then a parent option evening flyer. These will be on the qualification homepage by the middle of next week. I've had on good authority today that they will be available next week for you, because I know a lot of you have parents' evening and you're hoping to get these out. So fortunately, they're not available at the moment, but they will be by next week. And then we come to today, which is the professional learning new specification briefing and question and answers. And this is the last one of the new Science Double Award, but I would like to remind you that there are other events happening over the next 2 weeks where we will be doing a brief on the specification of the integrated science. So if you haven't had a chance yet, please do book onto them, as I won't be covering much of that at all this evening. We're focused this evening on the double award qualification. Okay, and like I said, we should be all done and dusted before 5 o'clock easily. Then the sample assessment materials. These will be available on the qualification homepage by the middle of next month. So the 17th of December, next month, these will be available. And I know how beneficial these are in terms of planning and helping your assessments in schools. And I know you'll be eager to have a look at these as well. And I have got some examples of the type of ones at the end of this presentation this evening as well. And then another really valuable asset for teaching is the guidance for teaching. This will look at the specification in a bit more detail and give you guidance on how you may want to expand on some of the topics in your subjects. And this will be available at the beginning of January. Sorry, not the beginning, the end of January, the 22nd of January, 2026. And this is in line with being released just before the Pan Wales events. And hopefully you'll get a chance to look at these beforehand. But again, no worries if you haven't, because we will be looking at these in a bit more detail then as well in the preparing to teach professional learning days that are happening all across Wales in a face-to-face meeting. So again, it'll be much easier for me. I'll be able to put faces to names, and I'll get to meet you all again then between February and March, and we can look at the new specification and help you guide your planning towards that for the September 2026 then. And then finally then, the examination walkthroughs, these will be available on Portal in the summer term of 2026. Okay. Here is the table of all the dates for the Pan Wales event. So I'll leave this up for a couple of seconds just for you to find which one is available for your local authority and the dates to put in your calendars ready, because I know it's a good little day out to go and see some old friends and learn a bit more about the new specification as well. Moving on to the guide to the new qualification. As mentioned before, the specification is available for you. You can find it easily on the WJC subject website, or if you're having issues with that, use the link on this PowerPoint, or even put into Google the GCSE The Sciences Double Award, and that should guide you towards the WJC website where you can find it there. Again, if you have this to hand tonight, it might be useful, as there are some references to some pages where you could look into this in further detail whilst we're going through the event this afternoon. I wanted also to show you the qualification overlap timeline here. So as you can see, what we've got here is the legacy qualification, so the current double award that your year 10s and 11s might be doing at the moment. And so you might have your year 10s that started in September, and they might be doing the units 1, 2, and 3. They will be assessed on that in the summer of 2026. And then when they move into year 11, they might do units 4, 5, and 6 in the summer of 2027. And as per then for the current year 11s, they will be sitting units 4, 5, and 6 in the summer of 2026. There will be opportunity for those individuals if they wanted to reset any of the units in the spring of 2028 also. Okay, and then the Science Double Award Unit 7 will be done in the spring of 2026 with your year 11s, possibly, and then in 2027 then for your current year 10s, maybe. Okay, with this, there won't be a chance to resit these in the summer or spring of 2028. Then going on to the new qualification, I hope you're all aware that the new qualification will be starting in September 2026, and the first assessment will occur then in the summer of 2027, assessing units 1, 2, and 3 for your year 10s that will be beginning in September 2026. And then increasing then when they go to year 11, they will be sitting units 4, 5, and 6 and unit 7 then in the summer of and spring of 2028. Okay. This is the same kind of overlap timeline, but for the integrated science. I won't go into this in any detail. I'll be covering this next week, but I thought it was important just to show it here this evening as well. Now, moving on to the actual qualification and the assessment of it. This is a double award with 2 tiers of entry for each unit of qualification, apart from Unit 7. What that means is that there is a higher tier that runs from A star to D, and a foundation tier, which is C to G. Learners may be entered at different tiers across units. So that is for units 1 to 6. For unit 7, there is no tiering system. It runs from an A star to a G, okay, which is quite similar to the current or the legacy qualification of the double award. There is hierarchy in which units are presented, though, in the new qualification. Units 1, 2, and 3 should be taught before units 4, 5, and 6. And I'll go into more detail on why that's critical later on. And then Unit 7 should be taken during the final year of study. This is a double award, meaning that the qualification grade will be repeated. However, this is a bit different to the current legacy qualification, as there is an 8-point scale from A star to GG. There are no mixed grades for this. So currently for the legacy qualification, it's possible for pupils to get a BC. With the new qualification for all subjects following a double award, as instructed by Qualification Wales, there will be no mixed grades, and so pupils will be either getting a BB or a CC, and that will be the same for all double award qualifications going forwards. Okay. Looking at the double award qualification here, and in terms of the units and the assessment format, tiering, and the duration, as you can see, unit 1 to 3 there is biology, chemistry, and physics, and then units 4, 5, and 6 are biology, chemistry, and physics also. The units 1 to 3 should be done in year 10, and there will be a written exam at the end of year 10, which will be externally marked. Again, like as mentioned before, there is tiering for this, so you have a higher tier and a foundation tier. The assessment duration for this exam for each unit, so for units 1, for example, biology, it will be 1 hour 15 minutes. And the marks for that paper will be 56 marks. And that will be the same then for each unit. So for unit 1, 2, and 3, they're all going to be 1 hour 15 minutes and each 56 marks, and each corresponding to 14% of the final GCSE grade. And then moving on to year 11, for units 4, 5, and 6. Again, another written exam at the end of year 11, externally marked with tiering. This is also 1 hour 15 minutes per unit, and this is 64 marks per unit. So for the biology paper in year 11, this will be 64 marks, and this will correspond to 16% of their final GCSE grade. I want to also draw your attention to the brackets there where it says 8 marks for connections. I'll go into this further in a few slides time, but that's really important to know. And they are 8 really important marks as well. Then Unit 7, Scientific Inquiry. This is also externally marked. There are 2 scientific inquiries from a choice of 3. There is no tiering, as I mentioned in the previous slides. With this, it's quite similar to the current legacy qualification, where you will get, for instance, if you choose to do the chemistry practical and the physics practical out of the 3 options. For the chemistry, then you'll have a practical task, which is 1 hour, followed by a written task of 1 hour as well. And then the same then for the second scientific inquiry you choose. And these are worth 56 marks, which corresponds to 10% of the final grade there. Okay. There have been many questions previously about the assessment duration and the total mark, so I'll talk about that now, where the marks are 56 marks in year 10 and in year 11 64 marks, but both being the same time. This was a decision made by Qualification Wales, and that's why there is a difference there. So we're going on guidance from Qualification Wales regarding that. Moving on to the content of the units. So here are the units. So we have biology here, basis of life. Unit 2, chemistry, looking at chemical substances and how they behave. Unit 3, physics, which will be looking at forces, motion, and the universe. And then Unit 4, biology, looking at continuity of life. Chemistry, looking at chemical bonding reactions and resources. And then physics, looking at waves, electricity, and energy. And finally, Unit 7, scientific inquiry. In the face-to-face events in the spring, we'll go into these in far more detail, and you'll be splitting up into your subjects and have a chance to look at these with subject authors and examining teams to really look at any changes there are. I will look at some of these this evening, but we'll have much more of a deep dive into this in the spring. However, one key change you might see is the scientific inquiry. So scientific inquiry is central to this qualification. It is assessed across all units. So across unit 1, 2, 7, scientific inquiry skills should be used throughout. Every unit includes structured opportunities to develop inquiry skills, which should be embedded meaningfully into teaching and learning. The scientific inquiry skills to be assessed are listed on page 10 of the specification, and I will further along in this presentation be showing you some of these as well. If you would like further guidance, it is available in the scientific inquiry framework, which is in Appendix B, and also there'll be more information in the guidance for teaching document that's released in January. And again, we will have a session in the face-to-face events where we'll be looking specifically at these scientific inquiry skills in more detail also. Mathematical skills in the new qualification. As we know as scientists, mathematical skills are integral to scientific understanding and should be embedded within subject content, not taught separately. Planning should ensure learners consistently apply relevant mathematical skills throughout their science studies, as outlined in Appendix D, which you can find on page 79 of the specification as well. Briefly, earlier I mentioned there was 8 marks in units 4, 5, and 6. these are to do with connections and relationships between topics with scientific disciplines. This is because learners are required to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding of relationships and connections between different topics within disciplines for the new qualification. You'll see in units 1 to 3, content is italicized. This highlights content then that is developed in units 4 to 6. The aim is to create a natural progression that strengthens foundational concepts and deepens learners' engagement with the subject content and scientific inquiry also. So if we look at this in a bit more detail, you can see here the section of the specification looking at Unit 1, Biology, 1.4 there, interdependence of organisms and how do organisms live together. You'll notice the topic, and underneath there you've got subtopics. So in this Unit 1.4, pupils should be looking at relationships within an ecosystem and then biotic and abiotic factors within an ecosystem. And this is where maybe the layout is a bit different here, where we've got these specification stems. So as you can see from this slide here, we've got learners should know and learners should understand. I will go through the definitions of these and what these mean in a few slides' time. But for this one, I want to highlight what I was mentioning earlier about the italicized content. So as you can see here, we've got food chains show the transfer of energy between trophic levels, and that an ecosystem refers to interactions between all living organisms and their physical environment in a specific area. So this topic on how are organisms living together, within that first section, we've got food chains and interactions in the ecosystem. Now this is really important because when we look then at Unit 4, here on 4.1, biodiversity, what are the impacts of human activity on ecosystems? You can see underneath the subtopics there's a box that I've highlighted there. Learners should make connections with the italicized content in topic 1.2.2, 1.2.3, 1.4.1 and 1.4.2. And the example we were looking at previously was 1.4.1, looking at food chains and ecosystems. And so you can see here easily how they can be linked to this new unit in year 11, looking at biodiversity. Okay, so for the second examination for each discipline, 12.5%, that 8 marks I was mentioned earlier, will be allocated to assessing learners' knowledge and understanding of the relationships and connections between different topics. So they'll be building on what they've learnt in year 10 and year 11, and they'll need that knowledge from year 10. And that's why units 1, 2, 3 should be completed before going on to doing units 4, 5, and 6. Now, these specification stems are new to the new qualification. And again, we will have time in the event in spring to go over these and look how these specifications might look in your certain subjects. But tonight, I thought it was important for you to know what each of these mean. So learners should know. This is where learners are required to demonstrate basic knowledge and understanding. And secondly, we've got learners should understand. So here, learners are required to demonstrate greater depths of knowledge and understanding, application of the knowledge to familiar or possibly unfamiliar contexts, and analysis and evaluation of information for a given purpose. And then we've got learners should be able to. This is where learners should need to apply their knowledge and understanding to a practical situation or demonstrate application of scientific inquiry skills. Again, we'll have a chance to look at those 8 scientific inquiry skills later on. And then finally, learners should be aware of. Learners do not need to understand all aspects of the specified content in detail. This statement is used to set the content into a context. And I think that's the most important bit from this one, where any thing in this learners should be aware of. You should be using this to set the content into a context. Okay, so teachers should refer to the guidance for teaching documents for further guidance on the depth and breadth to which this content should be taught. So in January, when the guidance for teaching comes out, you can have a look there and see what these stems mean a bit more as well. Moving on to the language of the specification. The use of the word including indicates that the specified content must be taught and could be subject to assessment. Okay, so if you see including in the specification, this is really important that this needs to be taught and that pupils could be assessed on that specific topic. The use of the word for example or such as, indicates that the specified content is for guidance only. And so alternative examples could be chosen for this. The layout of the content in the application will also support teachers' understanding of depth. If content with an amplification statement is for just straightforward knowledge recall, such as naming something, like we've got here is the structure of the leaf, where your pupils will need to be able to identify cuticle, epidermis, stomata, guard cells, and so on. You will have just a bullet point for it. No sub bullet is used. There'll be just the bullet points there. And if there's any content in this part in bold, that is for higher tier only. Okay. If you then see sub bullets, so as we saw previously, where the structure of the leaf, and we had a bullet point for that, if there is then sub bullet to that bullet point, this indicates that the content given must be further developed. For example, it will be not enough for a pupil to know just what the stomach is. They'll need to go further into this, and more content needs to be given than just knowing just the stomach or just the pancreas, just the liver. Again, any content here that is in bold is higher tier content only. Now, changes from previous specifications. I know that this is one thing I was really eager to see. What are the main changes? But again, we will go into this in further detail in the spring. But I thought it was important just to highlight some key changes from the 2015 specification that have been removed. So as you can see here, some of the topics in biology, we've got the bell jar model of inspiration and expiration has been removed from in the new qualification for biology. In chemistry, hardness of water, fluoridation and solubility has been removed. And then in physics, density, for example, has been removed. Okay, but again, we'll go into this in more detail, looking at the rationale behind this in the spring. There is also new topics in the 2026 qualification that have been included for this qualification. Again, we will cover this in more detail in the spring. However, you may notice as well, biology here, transport systems in plants has been put in for the new double qualification. And anyone that's taught this before will notice that this was part of the separate science, the triple biology. And so this is really to enable those pupils now that are following the new qualification double award to then go into further learning post 16 into A levels, then covering content from the triple science that has been moved now into the double to enable them to go on and study biology, chemistry, or physics at A level. So transport systems of plants, they're looking at the phloem and the xylem. And then chemistry, you've got identifying salts, for example. And then physics, we've got waves, ultrasound, total internal reflection and color being added to the double award here. Okay. There are also other approaches to the new qualifications that are different to the 2015 qualification. For example, there are no specified practicals. This, again, is for the shift and the focus to be more on the scientific inquiry that is taught throughout all units. And again, we'll have more time in the spring to look at these new skills and look at where these could be used in each subject in the spring. There is also difference in weighting of assessment objectives, which I will cover later on, and I'll show you where the differences lie there. And then there's more focus on sustainability, inclusivity, relatability to students, ethics and future research, and also integration of learning experiences that correspond to the curriculum for Wales. Okay, and then interconnected scientific concepts we've already discussed, where there's connections and relationships between units 4, 5, and 6 with units 1, 2, and 3. And also then new and improved blended learning resources and an editing function. And for me, this is one thing that over the past couple of years I've taken advantage of as when I was teaching and used very regularly and was a great asset for me. And I've seen the new editing function, and this is again something that I think a lot of us will benefit from in the future. In the spring term, I'll go over this in far more detail. I can show you more examples of this and how we can log in through Hub and basically create lessons for yourself on the new blended learning resources. But hopefully that will be something that will be of use for you as well. Now then, the scientific inquiry, as I've mentioned previously, is fundamental to this qualification. And we can see here the 8 skills that we need to be covering through units 1 to 7. So for example, scientific inquiry 3 there, make informed decisions based on scientific inquiry and gather and present secondary data while evaluating data. Okay, these are core elements of this qualification, involving process of asking questions, exploring ideas, and understanding natural phenomenon through practical investigation and critical thinking. It includes activities such as observing, experimenting, gathering data, and evaluating outcomes. Investigations are a structured part of scientific inquiry, focused on collecting data to answer specific questions or test hypotheses. These will help learners develop essential skills like planning, measuring, analysing, and refining scientific work. Importantly, scientific inquiry is not confined to a single unit. It should be embedded across all units to ensure learners continuously build and apply these skills in a meaningful, engaging context. Within the subject content, there are a number of examples where you'll see investigate used. This is where students will be able to engage with the scientific inquiry structure. Okay. And again, more information is available in Appendix B on page 75. And again, we will go into further detail on this in the Pan Wales face-to-face events in the spring. As I mentioned a few times this evening, there will be more detail given on the ins and outs of the content, looking at deep dives into each unit so that teachers are fully aware of what to expect for each one of the subjects, and then rationale for allocation of topics to certain units. We'll also have comments from the SAMS writers on questions, things to note or to look out for, and also key details lifted from the guidance for teaching as well. Okay. So here are the changes to the assessment objectives. I hope you've all had a chance to look at these, but if not, I'll go into this in further detail now. So you're aware that there are 3 assessment objectives, AO1, AO2, AO3. So your AO1 is looking at recall kinds of questions, and you'll see here that this has decreased from previous legacy qualification where it corresponded to 40%. In the new qualification, this is 25%. So there's fewer recall-based questions in the new qualification. AO2 then was more emphasis on applying the knowledge. And with this has increased from 40% in the previous qualification to 50% here in the new qualification. And again, another increase in the AO3, which is increased from 20% to 25% in the new qualification. If you want further information about full definitions or example of the assessment objectives, you can look at page 67 of the specification document, and it goes into more detail there. Okay. The SAMs then will be released, as I mentioned, on the 17th of December. This new qualification prioritizes applying knowledge and evaluating information over basic recall of knowledge, as mentioned previously, and that's where the shift in the assessment objectives lies. The next two slides now, I've got examples from the draft SAMs to show you an example of what questions might look like. I'm a biologist myself, so you've probably noticed with all the biology examples in these slides. But here we've got a question looking at the light microscope studying cells. Questions here focusing on why the students carried out step 3 and why they're carrying out step 4. So you're really focusing here on their scientific inquiry skills. If you look at the mark scheme there, you can see a column right at the end, which is inquiry skills. And so there will be questions in the assessments that are specifically looking for their inquiry skills, like here. Okay. Another question I wanted to show you then from Unit 4, which encompasses something that we've discussed earlier on. So this question here is looking at the effect of temperature on the body, and also then looking at dehydration and the effects of cells. So this is from Unit 4 Biology, and as you can see from the mark scheme, although it is quite small, I apologize for that, but you can see an extra column at the end here looking at connections and relationships. So these are those 8 marks, the 12.5% I was mentioning earlier. These are the type of questions where they'll have to refer back to Unit 1, for example, for this one, and Unit 4. So you're looking at enzymes there that are covered in Unit 1 for knowledge for the able to answer the first question, and then looking at cells and movement in and out of cells then for the second example question. Okay. Now then, looking at the resits for the new qualification, so this is pre-16 candidates. Candidates may resit an individual unit once only. The better UMS from the 2 attempts will be used. If any unit has been attempted twice and a candidate wishes to enter the unit for the 3rd time, the candidates will have to re-enter all units. This is referred to as a fresh start. And then when retaking qualification, candidates may have up to 2 attempts at each unit. However, no results from units taken prior to the fresh start can be used. The terminal rule is set at 55% of the overall qualification. This can be met by entering units 4 to 7. If the assessments being retaken contributes to 55% terminal rule requirement, the mark for the new assessment will count regardless of previous results in that assessment. Okay. Now looking at post-16 candidates, there is no limit on the number of times a candidate can resit an individual unit. However, the better UMS from the most 2 recent attempts will be used. The fresh start rule does not apply to post-16 candidates. There is no terminal rule that applies to post-16 candidates for the GCSE The Sciences Double Award. Okay. Now then, that's the end of the specification brief this evening. What I'm now going to do is look at some pre-submitted questions, and then I'll also look at some questions that we've had over previous events over the last 2 weeks, and then I'll look at some of the questions that have been asked this evening. So if you haven't asked anything and you want to ask it, please put it in the Q&A now. And then by the time I get there, hopefully they'll be there and we can discuss them in more detail then. Okay, so some of the questions that have come in on the structure of the qualification. So will there be changes to the style of questions in the exams, as these have evolved over the last few years already? Will past paper questions from the legacy qualification be suitable as a learning tool? So, as mentioned there, a number of changes have been made to the assessments. We will be covering these in the spring. Qualifications and assessments have been produced to satisfy the demands of Curriculum for Wales. There's been a significant change in the balance of the assessment objectives that I mentioned earlier. And so this is going to have an impact also on how the assessments will look. So the topics from the legacy qualification may be suitable, but maybe the weighting of questions and assessment objectives have changed, and so they might not be as relevant also. Will the style of the NEA, I think they meant the non-examined assessments here, so the practicals maybe, be any different to the current system? If so, how different? When will there be samples available for these? So the approach to scientific inquiry and the new style of Unit 7 assessment will be also covered, as I mentioned, in the spring. But a sample task for each of the sciences has been produced for them. And then the final question here, is the window between releasing practical exam information and pupils sitting the practical exam the same as before? Yes, it is. Okay, the instructions will be sent out by the end of September, as they are for the legacy qualification, and then the Unit 7 assessments will then occur in the January to February half-term window then. So quite similar to the current double award. Content-wise, within the amplification, the learner should be aware of section. To what extent are learners expected to know this information? How deep does their knowledge need to go? And will they be examined on this? So hopefully you've seen previously when I went over this that I've answered this question already this evening. However, there will be more detailed guidance on the application statements in the spring. However, I think personally the learner should be aware of, remember, it is for putting context to the content. Will equations be given on page 2 in the physics exam? Yes, they will be provided for the physics exam and also on the integrated science examinations too. Now, will textbooks, information organisers and integrated learning resources be released for the Science Double course at the start of the course, particularly in Welsh? So WJC, regarding textbooks, and no longer endorse these textbooks. WJC provide significant support for the qualification by using our digital resources. So we mentioned earlier the blended learning resources. We've got knowledge organisers and the new edited blended learning resources. These will be available ready for all units by September 2026. There are some available at the moment. They've got Unit 1, 2, and 3, for example, ready, and they should be released pretty soon if you want to have a look for them and start planning. These will also be Welsh and English will be available at exactly the same time. And then, will relevant sample questions be modified and added in the question bank to be more relevant for the new course? So the SAMs will be uploaded to the question bank as well, to help you there. Okay, questions. Again, this is a chance for you to put any questions in, but I'm going to just cover some questions that have been asked over the previous events quickly. So bear with me, I'm going to have to switch over to the other screen here. Get some of these up. Here. So, one question here. What was the rationale of not including specified price? So not including the specified price, this is really to encourage centres to complete a range of scientific inquiries linked to the area that they live in, and also the equipment available for centres. It also gives you this freedom on what you'd like to do and what you can and can't do. And I think it's to give ownership to the centres to choose which practicals they're comfortable in doing, and to choose in line with the curriculum for Wales as well. Question here, will there still be QER questions? No, there will not be any more QER questions. So the 6-mark questions, there was a concern that maybe this with going on to A-level with essay writing, one question was asked why there will be none of these. There will be maybe some questions that are the maximum could be 5 marks, and the removal of the QER questions. This was also another consultation and a decision by Qualification Wales regarding this. Are there overlap questions between foundation and higher papers? Yes. There will be 25% question overlap, so similar to the legacy qualification now, where you've got the questions from the last couple of questions in the foundation tier will then be seen on the first couple of questions on the higher tier. A question again, I hope I mentioned this earlier, but maybe you didn't quite hear me. What is the rationale of not having mixed grades? This was a decision by Qualification Wales. Again, it's the same grading structure for all other double award qualifications there. Okay. Question did come in regarding the option evening flyers, and again, I hope I've mentioned that this evening that they should be up by the middle of next week, hopefully. There we go. Question here saying, you said the online resources will be available from September 2026, but that is when the teaching has begun. Can they not be released before? Then so planning teaching materials can take place. So these resources, as mentioned just a minute ago, these are being published as we speak. And so I know Unit 1, 2, and 3 are available, but I'm not sure if they're on the website as of today, but they should be really soon, and they will be, as the resource team are creating them, they'll be put on there throughout the year. So there will be some there to help you with your planning as you go along. So as soon as those units 1, 2, and 3 are up there, you can start planning and help with your operations. When will the mapping documents for separates to document for separate to new double be available? This will be available before the preparing to teach events. Okay, so we'll hopefully see them. One question was, will the teacher's guidance be available in Word format? No, they will be released in PDF format, which is also the case for the specification and the SAMs as well. Okay. One question here, is there a certain percentage of our students cohort that must do the new sciences? No, there's no guidance on this. The guidance comes from Welsh Government, and schools should choose this. Another one here, triple awards should continue after 2031, pardon me. how do we make sure this happens? Who do we contact? So if you, like this person, would like to see the triple award continue after 2031, there will be a consultation in the autumn of 2028 by Qualification Wales, so make sure you are part of that and voice your opinion. And will the double award and integrated award allow for movement between pupils? There's always movement in year 10 and possibly up to the end of year 10. If I place someone in integrated and they do well or change their mind and vice versa, is there scope to move them between the awards, or will this have teaching and learning implications? So with this, the double award and integrated are separate, completely separate qualifications. And so they meet the approval criteria set by Qualification Wales. One thing I would say is that integrated science is not intended to be a route to A level, which then brings me to the next question that came in, is GCSE a pathway to A level, or is triple sciences the pathway? Both are suitable for pathways then onto A level. However, integrated science is not. And then, is there going to be a reform of the A-level science qualification? Qualification Wales have asked WJC to conduct a targeted proportionate review of A-levels in Wales, and science qualifications will be included in this. Significant change is not anticipated. Okay. And then I'll also bring up, this is going to come up on the screen there, and I'll just bring this over here. So a lot of these are quite similar questions from last night. So there's one here. Is it possible to get the specification in all documents as index PDF so that we can click on the things instead of scrolling all the time? This should be the case anyway. The specification on the website will contain links. Get this in. Is the guided learning hours for teaching the 3 parts of the sciences the same as the double award maths? So yes, the new qualification, they are the same guided learning hours as maths, which is 240 to 280 hours. A question that came in regarding the different marks. So why are the marks different for each examination? Why not keep these 60 marks and then adjust the UMS? Again, I tried to cover this earlier, but this was a decision made by Qualification Wales, not WJC. And then that before. In the new qualification, how will we know which experiments to do with pupils? So again, as I mentioned earlier, the idea is you're free to choose the activities that are suitable for your pupils and your centre. It's likely you will continue to do the tasks that have been successful for you in the past. The question then followed up with, if experiments are not shown, then teachers might be doing different experiments in different centres, and that's completely fine. It doesn't matter if teachers carry out different experiments. It's what's accessible to you as a school and what you think will benefit the students best as well to do their scientific inquiry skills. Okay. Well then, I hope that's been of use to you there, some of the questions. I will try and get on to the teams now to look at if there is any questions coming through. But first, some further support, in case you haven't had a chance to put your questions in. So here we've got the contact details for the WJC. So if you want to contact me as this subject advisor for science, just email science@wjc.co.uk and ask for me, and I can guide you with anything then. And then we've also got Jonathan Owen, which is the subject officer for chemistry, Dylan Jones, the subject officer of biology, and then Helen Francis, which is the domain leader and subject officer physics. and also Sarah Morgan, the Subject Support Officer there. Another further support, if you want to enhance your knowledge about the sciences, the new qualification, or become an examiner, and to further knowledge about assessment style, guidance on the assessments, please send in an application form to become an examiner. Like it says here, boost your career and enhance your subject knowledge as a WJC examinator or moderator. So if you follow the link there, wjc.co.uk/examine, it'd be great to have more examiners and guidance help with this. And also, before I look at your questions, if I could ask for you to fill in the event feedback survey, please. It will help us evaluate our events, give feedback for the slides, and also me as well personally. It'll be quite nice to get any feedback possible so that I can improve for next time and for when I see you all in the spring. So if you could use the QR code there or the link, I do believe that Wayne has put the material in the published Q&A. So there's a Dropbox there that you can use to get the links for everything this evening. But I can now see there are some questions that have come in, which is quite nice. So I'll slowly go through these now. I'll start at the bottom here now with Claire Semple. Thank you, Claire. Do you have a comparison document that maps or highlights the differences of the new from the current specification? Thanks. So, as I mentioned right at the beginning, a mapping document comparing the content of the separate science qualifications and the new 001 specification will be published before the Preparing to Teach events in the spring as well. Okay, so that should be with you before the event. Now we've got Jay Jones. For the current triple units 1 and 2 will not be altered, but will there be updates, particularly for physics, in terms of topics in each unit, as the new double does not align as neatly as biology and chemistry? So no, there won't be any changes made to the content of unit 1 and 2 in the triple. Mapping grids will be produced in time for the Preparing to Teach events in the spring. So I hope that answered your question there. Jay Jones for Pantra Harvard. Now, our best from Cardiff High School. For the connections, is it just connecting things from year 10 physics with year 11 physics and not between the sciences? So year 10 biology with year 11 physics, etc. No, the connections are subject specific. So connections just between the two physics units. There might be some skills that they can use from both. So I'm thinking now of chemistry and physics and some math skills that might correspond, but in terms of topics, content, it will just be from year 10 physics to year 11 physics. Anonymous here. Will the 8 marks for connections be between the 2 units of physics? Yeah. So as mentioned just then, so they are between the year 10 and year 11. Another Are there 8 connection marks in the year 10 units too? So no, the 8 marks for connections are only in year 11, only in units 4, 5, and 6. So unit 7, Andreas. Hello, Andreas. How are you? Unit 7 should be taken in the final year of study. Clarify this, please. Could pupils sit this assessment in year 10 as they currently can? So that they would only be able to do the assessment in year 11. Yes. So it is highly recommended that Unit 7 is sat in year 11 after learners have had time to develop their practical skills. Also, the terminal rule is 55%. This can be achieved by entering Units 4, 5, and 6, and 7. Okay, so hopefully that makes it clear that should be taken in year 11. And then an anonymous question here. Will this presentation definitely be sent via email? I do believe so, but there is also Dropbox links available in the chat that Wayne has put in there. The next question from T. Tate in Penrhill Comprehensive School. This was probably sent before I asked the question earlier, but I'll go over it again. Will there be QER style questions for extended writing in the new qualification? No, it's not a requirement of the new specification. Our best from Cardiff High School again. Will the new page 2 equation sheet be released with the SAMs in December? Yes, they will be available in the SAMs also. Okay, another anonymous. Good evening. Are you able to confirm whether the current entry level will continue in its present form as well as single award and double award qualifications? There will be an entry level 1 foundation qualification available in September 2027. The Science Double Award and Integrated Sciences are available from September 2026. Okay, bear with me, sorry, I just have to take a bit of water. Now then, another question here from T. Tate. Will the overlapping content mean that as in the current course students can sit all foundation and gain a B grade, will this still be an option? Candidates for this will need to sit a mix of tiers. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll wait and see if there is. Any more questions coming in? So bear with me, as I know there's a delay from us. Yeah. Again, if while I'm waiting for any further questions to come in, if you could give us a spare 2 minutes, just fill out the feedback survey, I'd be much appreciated. Also, I would also take this time now also to thank you all for coming. I know it's a lot to stay after school as well, a long day of school. So I'm very grateful for you as well to stay and listen to me talk for the last hour and a bit on this, but I hope it's been of use to you. And again, I'd like to emphasize next week, if you want more information on the integrated science, to book onto those. And then again, we'll see each other in the spring anyway, where we can go into this in further detail as well. Just check in now if there is any. You can still see there's quite a lot of you still here. Okay, I can see a question coming in now saying that the presentation isn't in the Dropbox. I'll chase this up as soon as it might be that they're going to be added after the presentation has finished, the end event, that they are uploaded after. But they should be with you really soon. And if not, please contact us using the WJC email, and we'll chase that up again and make sure that everyone gets a copy of the presentation. I do believe also you'll get a Q&A document with all the questions that have been asked as well. The event in the next couple of weeks as well. I believe if you go to the post-event folder in the Dropbox, you should be able to find the presentation in there. Wayne's just sent it, put it in there, published it there for you now, in case you haven't had access to it beforehand. Okay, if there is no further questions, we'll I'll end it there. But if again you find that can't think of the question right now and that you want to know a bit more further on, just contact us, and we will give you some more information or answer any questions that you have. Although I'm just seeing one question coming through now, I think. Regarding the Tanya.Cymru resources, really helpful. Do you know if these will also be updated? At the moment, we're not sure, but we will try and find out for you regarding them. Yeah, thank you very much for this evening. I hope you all have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing you all in the new year. So thank you very much, everybody. We'll end it there.